All righty, righty, righty. So, good evening, good evening. We are live. My name is Michelle, aka the Ignited Teacher. And what I do here on my channel is I help math educators with research based, evidence based strategies that can be implemented in their classroom as early as the very next day. So, if that is you, then you are in the right place. So, if you are watching me live, if you're watching me on the replay, please drop wherever you're watching from in the comment section. You could be watching me on Twitter or X. Ugh, it kills me every time I have to say that. I hate it. Who does X? Like, seriously? Come on now. But anyway, I digress. I'm not going to get on my soapbox tonight about that. But if you're chatting with me tonight, let me know where you're chatting from, what grade level you teach, or who you support if you're outside of the classroom, because if this can be for math interventionists as well. So, as you all know, I'm going to start off with this. I am hosting a workshop this weekend. It's Saturday, it's an hour and a half long. I will be talking about and demonstrating how to use the math intervention cycle. The link is in the description of this live stream. I'll drop it again if you're on Facebook, Twitter. I'll try to tweet it out again. It has become this whole thing with Twitter these days, but definitely drop your, if you're interested, check that link out. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with tonight's topic. And hi, Tara. I want to talk about how the math intervention cycle can make your life easy and save you some time. A lot of times, people make math intervention like this whole big deal and this progress monitoring. You have to do this and you have to do that. It's really not difficult. And you're probably saying, well, how do you know? Well, I've spent my entire career teaching at schools where I've had low performing students, and I have the data to actually back what I'm saying. Math intervention is about closing gaps quickly. And I created this cycle called the math intervention cycle. And you're probably asking, well, where did that come from? Well, it came from me analyzing my practice of closing gaps. And I noticed when, no matter what I did, I actually used these 4 different steps. And that's why I don't promote programs like, some of these programs are great, like In the Box Kit, and they say to come with these resources, and that's not necessarily going to make it. Math intervention is not cookie cutter, and it's not something that you can find in a box. It is a system that is implemented, and I'm not going to say fidelity because I hate that word, because in education, there's nothing that can be done in fidelity because you're working with human beings. And fidelity means that you're basically working with an inanimate or non-living object, because we can't quantify human behavior. But I'm going to get off of that. So I'm going to show you my intervention cycle. The math intervention cycle starts in one phase. It starts with assessing. And you're probably thinking you have to do this assessment. No, I think we've gotten away from understanding what assessment is and what that looks like in the classroom, especially with a lot of the veteran teachers leaving and retiring. We've gotten to where a lot of teachers feel like assessment is standardized tests. The last thing you want to use to assess your students, and especially for intervention, is a standardized test. And I want to dispel that myth, and I'm going to tell you why. Using a standardized test for intervention, a standardized test measures what it measures, based on, like for STAR testing in the state of Texas. It's not a gap closing test. It's a readiness test. It determines whether or not children are ready for the next grade level. That's all it does. So why would you use that in intervention to close gaps? You have to choose the data point that makes sense for what you're trying to use it for. So if you're using standardized tests and standardized numbers like district assessments, I would encourage you to go back to the practice or start the practice of creating your own test and really looking at the instruction and the standards or student expectations for your students. That drives intervention, not a standardized test. That is one data point in time. Throughout the school year, you have multiple assessments that you can use with the assess portion of the math intervention cycle. So once you decide on your assessment, it could be a unit test, it can be a quiz, it could be something that you've used online. It doesn't have to be real difficult. Then once you get that information, you diagnose what the problem is. Now, the diagnose part is going to be by far the most difficult for a lot of teachers, especially if you're new to the profession. So if you're new to the profession, I highly recommend that you link up with a teacher that has been teaching in that content area for some time. And I'm not saying a third-year teacher. I'm talking about a teacher that has been teaching 5+ years in that content area. Because when we diagnose, it hinges on our experiences and our content knowledge. But if you have limited content knowledge, then it's going to be difficult for you to diagnose because you haven't seen all of the issues that arise from certain standards or students' expectations. For example, if you're teaching proportionality, there are so many skills or prerequisite skills that the students have to have mastered for proportionality. Same thing in secondary for slope, equations. There are a lot of skills that have to be unpacked and identified and taught for students to master those skills. Why? Because they are large overarching themes in mathematics, especially in that algebraic strand. On the flip side of that, for elementary has huge strands, especially for third grade, fractions and number and operation. Those are huge strands. So when you're looking at them where it's horizontal, and one of my teachers in the Math Intervention Academy told me I need to explain horizontal versus vertical. Horizontal alignment is what the student expectations are for the grade level. Vertical alignment is what we do across grade level for that strand. And sometimes, unfortunately, if you're not well versed in curriculum, you would be under the impression that vertical alignment means that it runs through all the grade levels, and it does not. In the last live stream that I hosted, I talked about distributive property. Distributive property is in third grade, but it's not revisited again until 6th grade. And then they have to be able to do it in 8th grade. So, and some of 7th grade, if I'm not mistaken. But that's the way that it works. It's not that you're going to have it in every strand. And that's why the diagnose part is really the difference maker in your math intervention. Now, in the diagnose part, you also can use the progression. So the difference between a progression and the vertical alignment, the vertical alignment is what needs to be done in that strand of mathematics. However, on the flip side of that, the vertical alignment the progression tells you what it looks like. Basically, what do these skills look like for mastery? And you can create a progression map yourself for the vertical alignment, because I do it all the time, because I need to see what mastery looks like like I did it for distributed property. I needed to see what the TEK or grade level expectation was for 3rd, 6th, and 8th grade. And then eventually high school, which is Algebra 1. The next part of the math intervention cycle is the reteach. That's the easy part. It's once you've diagnosed what the problem is, you look for resources. You reteach that skill from the vertical alignment, not what is on grade level. If you're a math interventionist, you should not be following what the teacher is teaching. You should be following the alignment for those themes that are big ideas at that grade level. A lot of math interventionists get sucked in to doing what the teacher wants them to do. That's the teacher's responsibility. It is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to close gaps in the vertical alignment. So the last one is reassess. And that's your I lost my train of thought. That's your progress monitoring. And progress monitoring, like I said before, and in all my videos, progress monitoring is not big. It's basically seeing if what you did actually worked. So I have been on here for almost 20 minutes, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. But if you want to learn more about the math intervention cycle, want to see it in detail, register for my workshop this Saturday. I promise you that you will not be disappointed, and you will come away with some things that you can do immediately in your classroom to make a difference and close those gaps that your students need. So I will see you all either in my next live stream or at the workshop on Saturday. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, definitely drop them in the comment section, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.